Hi, so welcome to part 2 of how to get started in drawing. And this is a foreigner living in the Philippines. I know this is not anything to do with the Philippines, it seems, but maybe it's more to do with the Philippines and life than you think. What I asked in the first video was for anybody who's interested in drawing to realize that drawing is not just all about talent, it's also about skill. And skill can be developed, and it's developed by repetition of the same simple movements. Now, in all things, the same basic shapes keep recurring. So I've penciled out the basic shapes, but you can't see them very well, so I'm going to ask my wife Beth to focus down on what I'm actually drawing right now. And this one well, obviously that's a square. Yeah, that's a square. You make a square into a cube, back over here. So now you have a cube. Now, one of the other basic shapes is the triangle. Now we see triangles a lot, and we probably see them so much more than we realize, and getting you to realize that all of these basic childlike drawing shapes are important is the whole point of the lesson. So out of the triangle, make it three-dimensional, and then it becomes a pyramid. Alright, so the next, let's look at doing a rectangle. And there's an ant wants to get in on the act. No, I'm not doing any lessons for ants. So that's a rectangle, okay? If we make that three-dimensional, there we have it three-dimensional, one particular look at it. If we do another three-dimensional one, now if you're looking at these shapes and thinking, well that's no great thing, anybody could do those, that's exactly my point. Anybody could, anybody can. But what happens is that people give up because they're not great at drawing when they sit down with a pencil and a paper. So keep on with the shapes. Here's another one, a tube. Now that's a tube or a cylinder, right? The next, a circle. Now in order to do a sphere, a ball, that's when shading comes into it. So we're going to skip that part now because we're going for the simple shapes and do the next one, which is a cone, which if you were looking at old movies, certainly in England, this will be the dunce's cap. And in my day, as a comic book reader, if it was a dunce's cap, the kid sat in the corner with wearing this, and it had a D on it for dunce, which means stupid. Now, these are all very simple shapes. So, when we're looking at simple shapes, how do we see those shapes in our everyday life? And that's the next part of the lesson for you. In looking at these simple shapes, start to see them for what they are. They're the basis of all building, of all construction, of everything that we live in, everything that we use. Take this one on the cylinder and I'll translate this one in particular into something recognizable. Okay, so anybody with a motorcycle, anybody with a car will recognize this as an exhaust pipe. It's just a series of tubes, a series of cylinders. So this is the obvious example of how we see these shapes. Now, we're not here, as I said, to prove that I can draw, because as you're looking at these and saying, well, this doesn't take any great skill. That's the point of the lesson, that it doesn't take any great skill to be able to get good at doing these shapes. Now, once you're good at doing these shapes, and you start to recognize these shapes as you go along in your everyday life, boy, life becomes simpler, and the quest to be able to draw becomes just a question of doing a little time with a pencil and a paper. So, how can we recognize these shapes within our life? Let's look at that one. That's just a box of matches. What is it? Well, it's a rectangle. It's a rectangle that's made up into a box. So it's, for you as an artist, you look at this and you say, well, it's one rectangle sitting on another rectangle. Guess again, what's this? It's just a pencil sharpener. What is it? It's a box shape, and within the box shape you have circles, and within the circles you have, look at this, is a cone. This one here is a cone. It's a cylindrical shape, but it's in a cone. There's your dunce's cap. Let's look at something else. Did this once before. What's this? Well, actually, if you think of that being hollow, it's a cylinder. What's this on the end? Well, it's three-dimensional now, but it's actually the shape, think of it flat, it's the shape of a pyramid. That's how I begin to see things. Look at this. This is just a simple little bottle. And what is it? Well, it's a series of cylinders, and it's one cylinder on top of the other. There we have one cylinder on top of another, and then another one there. Now this, you can see, is a cylinder because it's hollow. Put that on top. Now if you've been practicing these simple shapes, you would be able to draw a bottle. Look at this. This is a series of shapes which you have been practicing. On the end is a cylinder attached to a small length of a bigger cylinder. And then on the end, look what we have. We have a sphere. Now within that sphere, look at what they have for the cooling rings. All straight lines, but then almost, as I see it, these almost triangular looks. Now, triangular is probably not quite the way to describe that, so I'll draw one other shape. And this shape is quite important because you see it a lot. And it's called the wedge shape. And a wedge is something that's thin at one end and thick at the other. So you can see here that actually even this is a combination of shapes which you've already been doing. On this side, on this particular drawing, it's a rectangle. And then if you see it, if you saw it standing up, you could say that that shape is half a triangle. Because if you put the other side in, there's your triangle. So the quest, your challenge before the next lesson, is to find the shapes in your everyday life. Look at your hand. What is your hand if it's not a series of tubes? Look at the fingers. They're a series of tubes. Some straight lines, relatively straight lines here. But as it goes, as it turns, look at it. And then right in this corner here is a triangular shape. This. So the hand, you could say that the hand is almost like a square shape. Then joining the hand, joining the thumb to the hand is almost a basic triangular shape, right? Then you have the nails. What kind of shape could you put to the nails? What kind of shape can you put to the tip of the finger? Look for these shapes in your everyday life. Every time you do something, when you pick up a pencil, ask yourself, well, what kind of shape is this? When you pick up a bottle, look at it. What shape is it? Look at this book. What basic shape would you say that that is? Everything that you look at is a basic shape according to these simple drawings, which you can do without talent. All that you do is practice, and if you practice, you will be able to do these things. Now, I'm going to show you something that is another aspect of drawing, and this is important, and it's probably almost as important as trying to learn how to draw. It's what's called, I've heard it called, the Prestart Syndrome, and that's a very complicated name for something that's difficult to do, but actually simple to say. Never mind the Prestart Syndrome. It's hard to get going. Now, one famous American artist, his last name is Hopper. I always forget his first name. But he was the artist that did a very well-known, popular painting of a 50s diner, a corner 50s diner. And it became very famous, and it became extra famous when someone else decided that they could improve on it. And what they did, they improved on the idea by seating at this long curved bar on this corner cafe. They put Marilyn Monroe and John Wayne and Elvis Presley and these famous household names, and they made the drawing even more. But back to the artist Hopper. Hopper didn't know about, well, he did know about the Prestart Syndrome because he couldn't get started, but he knew about it from the wrong end. That is, being the effect of it. Now, Hopper is reputed to have been so paralyzed by the blank page that he would sit in front of it with his pencil poised or his paintbrush poised, unable to make a mark on the blank page. And this is a common thing if you speak to any artist that is already established and doing work, who is not paralyzed by this thing called talent. They will tell you that sometimes making that first mark on the paper is absolute hell. Well, that's because of the Prestart Syndrome. Pre-start. In other words, we think of start as being the beginning, excuse me, but in actual fact, it's not the beginning. It's before the beginning that we have to attend to. Now there's another writer who wrote a book, I can't remember the man's name, I should have it for you as a reference, but he wrote a book fairly recently, in the last few years, called Do the Work. And in Do the Work, he said how every time someone exhibits the desire to create, right, God is said to have made it so that if you have the desire to do something, you have the ability to do it. Well, that's way above what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is the fact that when you want to do something, this is the desire to do it, and immediately, in exactly the same proportions, with exactly the same strength as this driving force to do the act, comes the opposition. And they go like that, head on, and they lock up in present time, in the moment. And where you are in all of this is frozen. You can't get down to it. So when you start drawing, don't be surprised if you get your paper and your pad and all of your pencils and everything is ready, and then when you go to actually do something, what happens? You just can't get started. And this will back up on you even more as you begin to do your work on your basic shapes. By that you can't get the pad out, you can't bring your pencils out, you fiddle about doing things. That's the problem. So no point in giving you the problem if we don't give you a solution. Now, here's the solutions that I have used. I think of the resistance coming in like this. I think of this as being some unknown reason in my subconscious, which may be based on all kinds of things. I've heard of young kids who do have a little talent and a desire, and the teacher says to them, "Kid, you're no good. That's no good. You'll never do a drawing. You'll never be an artist. Better get a job." And that judgment has stayed with them all their lives, even though they've been able to do quite nice drawings. Locked in their mind is the saying, "You'll never be an artist." And they get paralyzed by that. Well, without going into the why and going into therapy, okay, here's what you can do. You can play tricks on whatever it is that is stopping you from doing what you're doing. I think of this jokingly as the idiot mind. The idiot mind is doing what it's told, irrespective of whether it's right or wrong, or good or bad. All it has to do is to have the focus from you. In other words, if you focus on the phrase, "I can't draw," guess what the idiot mind does? It furnishes you with an experience that confirms what you've just told it. Hence, you can't draw. So here's what we do. We have to, the problem is, the challenge is to get over that point which stops you from starting, the Prestart Syndrome. So what do? Now, when I was a professional musician, in fact, prior to being a professional musician, I knew that practicing the